they claimed that he thought that it would hit the wall and then fall. Hey guys, what's up? My name is Sky Webb and I'm here to talk about a true crime story that I cannot get off my mind. But before I get started, I just want to put out a little disclaimer that I mean no harm to any of the victims or the victims' families, and I wish everyone who was hurt within this story the utmost peace and solace, either in rest or in recovery. With that out of the way, happy True Crime Thursday. Welcome back to my channel, or just welcome if you've never been here before. If you have never been here before, please go check out some of my other videos, or leave a like or subscribe or do something that would promote my channel and make me really, really happy, because I would really, really appreciate it. Thank you. Today we're looking into the murder of Emma Walker. Emma Walker was born on the 20th of March in the year 2000, and she grew up in a small town called Knox County in Tennessee, where she grew up and lived with her parents and her younger brother. And she was only 16 years old, a high school student, when she was murdered. So Emma was a beautiful girl. She was actually incredibly stunning, and she had a really bubbly, happy, beautiful personality to match her looks. She was very, very down to earth and very approachable. She was known for always being that girl who wouldn't let anyone else miss out. She was just very inclusive and very kind and caring, and really thought about others in a way that most people kind of don't. She was also a cheerleader, which she absolutely loved, and she worked very hard at it. She did dancing as well, and she was very, very good at it. It was a massive, priority in her life. And a lot of people at first glance would think, oh, well, she's like the stunning, popular cheerleader, like she must be stuck up, but she genuinely wasn't. She was a very, very genuine, kind person, and anybody, literally anybody who knew her would tell you the same thing. She had a really good, solid group of friends, especially at high school. She was very popular. So she was so good at cheerleading and at dancing that a lot of people believe she could, potentially go on to be a professional dancer, and that's something that a lot of people sort of not influenced but sort of pushed her towards and thought would be a good career option for her. But Emma had other plans. She already had her whole career goal, life sorted. She had it all planned. She actually wanted to be a prenatal nurse, which means she would be working with babies, especially sick babies and babies in ICU and premature babies. And what a kind-hearted, beautiful thing to even want to do with your life, first of all. And this was something that she was working very hard towards as well. She did really well in school. She had really good grades, so that kind of helped. She could have really done whatever she wanted to do because she was so good at everything, pretty much. Point is, Emma had a very bright future ahead of her, and she could have done a lot of good for the world, to be honest. So in freshman year, Emma met this guy called Riley. And if you don't know what freshman year is, I don't know what it was either, because obviously I'm from Australian. Oh my God. I'm from Australia. I am Australian. That's embarrassing. And I sound like this, so obviously I'm not from America. Point is, I had to Google what freshman year was, and according to Google, it's grade 9, year 9, so 14, 15 years old. Correct me if I'm wrong, comment down below, because clearly I don't know much. But anyway, this guy Riley, his name was Riley Gore, and he was 2 years older than Emma was. He was said to have been a star wide receiver, which again, I don't know what that means because I don't watch sports, as you can probably tell. But basically he was a very good footballer and had a lot of potential, sort of in a similar way to what she was like with cheerleading, he was like with football. He was a really friendly guy. He was really laid back, and he was the star of the football team, and she was the head cheerleader. So I mean, in a perfect story, it makes sense. In a teenage love story, it makes sense for them to get along, doesn't it? It made perfect sense for her to have a huge ass crush on him because she was younger, and he was this good looking guy who's really good at sport and all this stuff. So she had a massive crush on him. But the thing is that he actually ended up liking her back, so they ended up dating. But Emma's parents, they weren't particularly fond of Riley because they just felt like he wouldn't necessarily stick around. They felt like he wasn't necessarily good news. They just felt like he wasn't a serious guy, and he would never put her first in a serious manner when it comes to dating. So they just they weren't fond of him, and they let literally both Riley and Emma know that like they weren't cool with it. And I mean, as I said, they started off as like everybody loved them, everyone shipped them, including their friends, but as time went on, Emma's friends actually started to dislike him as well, and not just dislike him as a person, but dislike him for Emma or with Emma, and they felt sort of the same way that the parents did. Emma's closest friends started to feel like Riley didn't make an effort with them and didn't, you know, care to be friendly with them, even though they were such a big part of Emma's life, which should be important to him, but they felt like it wasn't, and they felt like he sort of got in between Emma and them and their friendship, and sort of put a wedge between them, because they felt like every time Emma wanted to hang out with them, she would like get in trouble or get a phone call or something would happen, and you know, Riley would interrupt. Every time Emma was with them without Riley, he would call and he would text and he'd be blowing up her phone until they weren't hanging out anymore. But despite whatever bullshit little wedge that Riley tried to get in between them, they still remained close friends. They just, you know, didn't get to spend as much time with each other as what they would have obviously liked to. And they were close enough still to notice all the very controlling but subtle things that Riley would do to Emma in their relationship. So they would notice that sometimes Emma wasn't allowed to go out if Riley told her not to, and Riley would tell her what she could and couldn't wear, and Riley would tell her what she could and couldn't do and who she could and couldn't see, and just all of these very controlling, very toxic little traits that maybe Emma didn't pick up on as much, or she didn't, you know, recognize as a red flag as much as what her friends and outsiders could, because she was obviously in the middle of it and very in love with him, and thought that she was just being a good girlfriend and he was just being a good boyfriend and being protective, and she just didn't see what was really going on. Riley became very, very obsessive and like overly compulsively concerned with Emma's whereabouts at all times. He always had to know what Emma was doing, who she was with, who she was seeing, where she was going. Like it just got ridiculous to the point where it was so obsessive and so toxic, and he was just so insecure with himself and with other people, and it was just a bit of a mess. They dated for around 2 years, but towards the end of the relationship they started to get into very, very heated, very bad arguments, usually because of Riley being too controlling, and they never ended well. Now I'm just getting like mad flashbacks of me at 14 years old fighting with my like 18-year-old boyfriend. Lovely, love that for me. But they would just fight so bad, and it wouldn't even be in person. A lot of the time it would be over the phone or over text, and they just get really very nasty with the words, and especially Riley would tell Emma like, go kill yourself, you don't deserve to live, like those kinds of things. And they'd break up for like a day or 2 days or even a week, and then they'd get back together again. So it was a very, very toxic, you know, cycle that they were going through. I'm getting more flashbacks. Okay, I'm getting hot, and I already look like shit, so I don't really give a fuck.
Like, fuck me. Like, look at my hair. Can't get too much worse than that, it's fine. It's totally fine. It's fucking hot in here, okay.
Eventually, Emma's parents just had a fucking gut full because of all the back and forth and the texting, and they're breaking up and they're getting back together, and she's crying and then she's happy and then she's, you know, whinging about him and then she's defending him, and they're just like, bro, no, like, enough is enough. So they took Emma's phone off her. That sounds so familiar. Where have I experienced that in my life?
Not in my life. Never in my life. I never lost a phone. I never had my parents take my phone off me and then have to hide like 3 burner phones in my room so that I could text my boyfriend that I should never have been dating. Not even a little bit. I just made that up in my head. That's fine. Moving on.
But Emma had an iPod, so she used that to communicate with him instead. So point 1 to Emma, point 0 to the parents. But in all honesty, it got to a point where it was really bad, and Emma's parents were, credit to them, trying to do the right thing. They were trying to get her away from someone that they thought was bad news or thought was toxic, and you know, they were doing what they could. It just might have been a little bit misguided. It wasn't working. They were just so sick of seeing their normally happy, bubbly, like happy-go-lucky, just positive, beautiful girl being this moody, sad, like isolated, doesn't want to talk, like just this different girl. It was a shell of herself, and it was because of this guy that she was dating. She allowed him to do that to her, which is something a lot of young girls do. So if you're a young girl, fuck stop dating boys, like they suck, bro. So anyway, at this point, the parents completely banned Emma from talking to Riley and banned her from seeing him. Yeah, that's a great idea. They even banned her from leaving the house. They essentially put her on like house arrest, and the only place she was allowed to go was school, like work, or the cheerleading or dance practice. Everywhere else was like banned because they didn't want her to sneak off and go see Riley. But just like me at 16, Emma didn't care what her parents thought, and she thought that she was right.
And that she knew better and she knew more at 16 years old. It was so clever.
So she continued to see him, sneak out to see him, text him, and date him. And that was up until she saw Snapchat stories of her boyfriend Riley while they were still together, at a party, getting a little bit too close to other girls for Emma's comfort, and these girls were kind of all over him, and she was like, this is the final straw, I've had enough, he already treats me like shit, we already argue way too much, like my friends don't like him, my parents don't like him, nobody likes him, he's doing nothing for me, and now he's all over these girls instead of me. So she was like, I've had enough, I'm done. She decided she was going to put herself first. She decided that she and her needs and her wants needed to come first, and she needed to better herself. And so she decided in order to better herself, Riley had to be out of the picture. So she decided that she was breaking up with him for good, no takebacks. And to be honest with you, I think that that's a really important sort of lesson here, is that, I mean, I guess it's the same as when people try and get drug addicts help. They say that you can't really get help until you want help, like yourself, you want to do better. I think it's very similar to teenagers, at least teenage girls. From my experience, they need to make the decision themselves. So you need to help guide them to make the right decision, not just outright ban them, unless it's like, I mean, obviously up to your discretion. I just feel like it's important to like point out the red flags and discuss the red flags and discuss the emotions behind them and what it could lead to and the repercussions and like things that kids don't think about. Like, teach kids how to be in a healthy relationship so that they don't have to go through a toxic one to learn how to be in a healthy one. Like, teach them before they do the toxic, you know what I mean?
I don't know. I'm gonna keep telling the story.
So Riley didn't take this breakup well, as I'm sure you can imagine. Riley didn't like the loss of control over her, and he knew that he didn't have control over her. He was not coping. He was struggling big time with the emotion. And he was just like blowing up her phone like crazy amounts, like just calling, texting, harassing, emailing, messaging, just everything he possibly could. But at this point, she was done. Like, she was like, I'm over it. She realized that she didn't need that in her life. She realized she didn't need him. She could do this on her own, and she was like, dude, I'm done. Like, I don't need this. It was just childish, and she didn't want him anymore. And because of this realization that he had lost all the control and that she didn't want him back, he actually tried to commit suicide, and he overdosed on Vicodin, which are pain relief medication. But he ended up being fine. He went to the hospital and he got treated, and yeah. Meanwhile, Emma was doing really, really well by herself. She was living her life, she was closer to her friends again, and she was happy, dude. Emma was doing so well that her parents lifted the ban from the house, so she was allowed to go where she wanted and do what she wanted. She was no longer grounded, and she was just doing really, really well, which obviously would have driven Riley even more mad. So one Friday night, after the football team had just won like a very important big game, everyone was in really good spirits. Obviously Emma was very excited herself because she was a cheerleader, so she's sort of a part of it, and then, you know, amongst it, everyone was just very, very excited, and they decided to have like an after party. But at 11 p.m. Emma started getting these very weird, very threatening texts from an unknown number. But then they kept texting, and she thought, well, maybe it's just Riley, so like, it doesn't matter. And then the text got worse, so she was like, okay, what is going on? The text was starting to tell her, like, go outside, you have to go outside. I have someone that you love, you need to go outside, otherwise I'm gonna hurt the person that you love. So they were quite threatening to someone else. She didn't know who, so that worried her in case it was like a legit threat. The text pretty much just like chastised her and like had a go at her for not caring enough about someone else's life to go outside, and she was like, like, what the fuck do you expect me to do, first of all? Second of all, I don't care about everybody's life, but I don't know who the fuck this is. I don't want to get killed either, like, fuck you. But anyway, she went and grabbed a friend from the party, you know, filled them in on what was going on, and they both went outside together. So when they go outside, they notice that someone's actually laying on the front lawn face down next to the mailbox, and so they're very cautious to approach this person because they don't know like who it is. But before they can even reach the person, they start to get up, and guess who it is? It's Riley. He was waking up from being knocked unconscious on the front lawn. So he tells this great big old story that he got kidnapped and he got chucked in a van, and he has no idea what happened. He has no idea who it was. Like, oh my god, they knocked me out, I got jumped here, like what? Like just just like crazy shit. Like, what an imagination. But poor Emma, at this point, she's crying, she's confused, she doesn't know what's going on. She's like, we just broke up, like I don't really want to talk to you, I don't really want to see you. What do you mean you just got kidnapped and you got knocked unconscious? Why are they texting me? What does it have to, like, what is going on? She was so confused and just crying and emotional. Poor Emma, like seriously, what even the fuck is that? How do you even deal with that at 16 years old? And Emma's friend didn't believe this story, and then Riley calls up his own friend to come and get a lift because Emma and her friend were like, well, we're not taking you home. So he had to call up his own friend, and then he told his own friend the same story about being kidnapped, and his own friend didn't really believe him. So then everyone was just left like, what the fuck is happening? So he ends up leaving with his friend, and Emma and her friend go back to the party and they enjoy their night. Then the next morning, while Emma is home alone, someone started banging on her front door really, really aggressively. So she stayed in a room and she shut the door and she made sure she would just like remained quiet. And then she went to text someone for them to come over so that she didn't feel like alone and she didn't feel scared, and it would just, you know, comfort her. But she actually ended up texting Riley, and she said to him like, look, I hate you, but I need you. So he comes over. She didn't actually let him into the house because she knew her parents would not approve of that. So she just sat on the front like doorstep with him, and they had a big long chat. They talked about, you know, obviously this weird knocking and how she felt a bit unsafe and how she wanted to trust him, and talked about a lot of stuff. And then when Emma's mum got home, she immediately asked him to leave, which he did with no arguments, no fighting on either his part or Emma's. And then Emma told her parents everything that had happened. They said about the weird story about being kidnapped and whatever. She then told them about the crazy knocking and why she texted Riley to begin with. And then her mum and her dad, they offered to like drive her back and forth from school to make sure that she was okay, just make sure like nothing was going on. And then the next day, for the rest of the weekend, her dad made sure to spend time with her and, you know, try and assess how she was coping with everything that had happened, because obviously it's very weird circumstances and she was a little bit spooked. So he just wanted to reassure himself and reassure her that, you know, they were safe, it was okay, like everything's fine. And she seemed okay, she seemed in good spirits, so he felt like she was okay. So that night they all say goodnight to each other and everyone goes to bed. And then halfway through the night, Emma's dad hears like a really, really loud bang. And he said it was like a really loud slamming the door, but he actually heard two of them, because the first one he sort of excused because he had just woken up and I was like, fuck that, it's probably nothing. But when he heard the second one, he was like, okay, I better go check on my fucking kids. So he went and walked into Emma's brother's room, checked on him, he was fine. He went and checked obviously like the rest of the house was fine. And then he went and checked on Emma. But obviously, mind you, it's the middle of the night, it's dark, his eyes are probably blurry, like he's probably still half asleep. He checked on Emma, she was still in bed, asleep as far as he could tell. So he was like, okay, I don't know what the fuck that was, but we're fine, it's all good. And he went back to bed. The next morning, everyone was up and getting ready for work or school or for whatever they had, except for Emma, and that wasn't really like Emma. So her mum, she calls out to her a few times and doesn't get an answer. Also not like Emma, because like that's pretty rude, like whatever. And then so she decides to go in and actually wake her up herself. When she goes in, Emma's on the bed asleep, so she like shakes her, she's calling her, she's trying to wake her up, and she's just not waking up. It wasn't until her mum sort of looked at her face properly that she realized something was wrong and she decided to check for a pulse because she still wasn't waking up and there was no pulse. So she quickly called 911.
What's going on there? I just tried to wake up my daughter for school and she has no pulse. Stay on the line. I'm transferring you to Rural Metro. Rural Metro, can you tell me what's going on? She's not responsive. She's gone. Okay, is she breathing? No. Her tongue's hanging out of her mouth. Is she laying on her back? Yes.
Her mum was just so frantic and desperate and hysterical, and like it is just heartbreaking how much panic you can hear in her voice, because obviously she's like she thinks her daughter's dead. Like this, like, oh my god, I can't even. And she says she doesn't even remember it now. She doesn't even remember calling 911. She doesn't even remember having the conversation with the operator. So like she must have been running off of pure adrenaline. Like it's crazy. At first, they didn't know what had happened to her. All they knew was that she was dead. And the news got out really, really quickly. So as I said, everyone was getting ready that morning, that day that she should have been at school. People at her school already knew that she had passed away. Even Riley decided to post something on social media. He posted a big thing on Facebook about how he loves Emma, how he'll always love Emma. He posted a Bible quote with it and some photos of them together, and it sounded quite sad. So it wasn't until detectives actually went to Emma's house that they realized there were 2 bullet holes beside her bed. So obviously this raised some pretty big questions straight off the bat. So they start asking around at Emma's school, and I'm sure you can guess whose name popped up time and time again, and that was Riley's, which, I mean, obviously Riley's name is gonna pop up, and so they decided they needed to talk to Riley. That being said, when the detectives did come around to speak to Riley, his friends were actually very, very supportive of him, and they were very worried about him because of his previous suicide attempt, because they were scared that, you know, losing Emma, someone that he loved so much, he had already tried to hurt himself because of their breakup. So now that she had actually died, they were very, very fearful for his mental health and what he might do to himself. So they actually warned the detectives and said like, hey, he's not doing so well, this happened, we're worried about him, can you go easy on him? Which, like, he had pretty good friends. And so the detectives actually took that on board, and they were like, okay, well, you know, there's no evidence at this point that would suggest he had anything to do with it. It doesn't seem like he knows anything because they were broken up. Like, you know what I mean? They kind of just were like, yeah, like, sure, he's not a prime suspect, nothing like that. We'll have a like basic question with him like we do with everyone else, like it's fine. That was until one of Riley's friends sort of let on that Riley had access to his grandpa's gun. And the only reason his friend even mentioned this to the detectives was because he was, again, trying to look out for Riley and warn them like, hey, I'm really scared he might do something. I know he has this gun. So he thought he was helping Riley, but the police were like, a gun? A gun? That's the murder weapon! And the story that he actually told this friend, Riley told this friend that the reason he had a gun was for self-defense because he'd just been kidnapped, but nobody believed that he had actually been kidnapped, including his friends. So that's why the friend actually brought it up to begin with, because he thought that that was a cover story for him actually wanting to hurt himself, which is sad, honestly. So now the detectives were like, okay, we're going to question him a little bit differently to what we originally planned. So at first, Riley told police that he had spent the entire night that Emma died at his friend Noah's house. And the police asked him, did you stay the whole night? And he was like, I think so. Yeah, maybe. No, definitely. And they were like, it was like a couple of days ago. How do you not know whether you stayed there the whole night? You either did or you didn't. Did you or didn't you? He's like, yeah, no, definitely. The police also had a bit of a hard time while questioning him because they had to consistently throughout the whole fucking interview follow up his answers with more questions to be more specific, because he wouldn't be specific in any of his answers. So he wouldn't actually refer to Emma as Emma. He would refer to Emma as the girl, or the girl who died, or the one who died. like completely distancing himself from Emma, which first of all is suspicious within itself, but also the police needed like full statements, not like half, like the girl, that could literally mean anyone. So they were consistently having to follow him up with like, by that, what do you mean? Do you mean Emma? Like, he was so difficult. Plus, in the interrogation or questioning, he kept saying how heartbroken he was over their breakup and how much he struggled with it and how it affected his mental health and all these things. And it's like, well, if it had that much of an impact on you, wouldn't you continue to call her Emma? Like, it was very weird to be like, the one who died. You said you're heartbroken over her. You're heartbroken because you broke up, but you're not heartbroken that she died? That's a little sus, bro. He was also asked about the guns, and he straight up lied and said that he had never had access to his grandpa's guns. He never stole one, he doesn't have one, he never would, like whatever. And then he literally got to the point where he was almost pleading with the detectives to not view him as a suspect. Like, he was like,
Am I a suspect? Do you think of me as a suspect? I really hope you don't think of me as a suspect. And then he's like, these are the reasons you shouldn't think of me as a suspect. Like, I swear I'm not a suspect. Like, I'm heartbroken. I was so heartbroken about that girl that died.
like, are you sure, sir? So they continued to question him about the gun and even admit that one of his friends had come forward to tell them, but he continues to deny it and just is like, no, never had a gun. Not me. Then his best friend Noah, whose house he maybe definitely did stay at the night of Emma's murder, he came forward with some information. And he said that Noah had actually asked him quite legitimately, like a very legitimate question, how do you get rid of fingerprints off of a gun? And then, like so many other bright, brilliant murderers that we've spoken about on this channel, he left the interrogation and immediately got on his phone and texted Noah. So he had to go at Noah for telling the police about him needing to get fingerprints off of a gun. And Noah was like, well, if you didn't do it, it doesn't matter, right? Solid point. At this point though, Riley was like so muddled up and tangled up in all of his lies, because one minute he has the gun, the next minute he doesn't have the gun, he got it from his grandpa's, he put it back, he didn't put it back, he never had it. Like, he just was a mess. He kept asking his friends how he could hide it, but then he'd tell his mum he didn't have it, and then he'd tell his friends they didn't have it, and I was just like, dude, like, get your shit together. And he actually asked his friends, look guys, stop talking to the police while I figure my shit out. Just give me some time to compose myself. His friends though, they were far better people than he was. And so they told the police that this is what Riley asked of them. So they actually like collectively decided to work together with the police to kind of set Riley up. So they were going to pretend to help Riley get rid of his gun and then obviously feed everything back to the police and have him get caught for it, because they're like, well, if he did do it, if he has something to do with it, like, he should get caught, and if he didn't, then as Noah said, what do you got to worry about? So they go over to Riley's house and they have this really cool little gadget, little sneaky camera thing, and it's, you know, like the little key clicker thing for your car, like you click it and it unlocks or whatever, I don't know what they're called. They had one of those, but it was a camera, so all they had to do was like sit it on the table like that, like aiming at him, and it would film everything, like record everything that he was saying. So it was very cool. So they start talking, they talk about all random stuff, and then slowly they were supposed to like subtly bring up Emma, and one of the boys are like, dude, I'm so sorry about Emma, like, how are you going? Like, how are you coping? And Riley starts saying how he's actually more worried about being arrested than he is about Emma's death. He's like, I don't even have time to be sad about Emma because I'm too worried for myself. I'm too worried that I'm gonna get arrested for something that I didn't even do. And he's like, it's like 7 years in prison, I didn't even do it. Like, why should I have to be more worried about going to prison when Emma just died? Like, I'd rather be worrying about Emma. Oh my God. And then he says how much he loved Emma and how like she was the best, like she was great, all this stuff. And then eventually the conversation gets turned into about the guns, and he's like, yeah, I need help getting rid of the guns. So the boys, they all hop into a car and they set off for a little gun hiding, river throwing trip. And they go to his grandpa's house first so that he can get the gun, because he actually had put it back. And then they go grab fast food, they go get a feed. and then they drive to the river. So there were actually 2 unmarked police cars following them the entire time because it was still being recorded. They knew what was going on, what was about to go down. Obviously, the other 2 boys knew that, but Riley didn't. And once they finished eating, they went and parked right next to the river, and then Riley got out of the car and he puts gloves on and he gets ready to throw it away in the river. Mind you, he's still telling his friends that he is completely fucking innocent, like completely innocent. He thinks that they're literally going to help him get rid of a gun, but still think that he's innocent. And like, anyway, this was the point that the police decided that they would strike, and they went and got him, and they obviously found him like literally like red-handed. They also found a trash bag filled with clothes, black clothing, presumably the clothes that he wore on the night that Emma was killed, which he was also going to try and throw in the river. Obviously, Riley's guilty. Like, Riley killed her. Riley shot her right next to her bed because like he knew where to shoot that would actually hit her while she was in bed. He's guilty, 100% guilty. But so when he went to trial, his defense tried to spin the story so that it wasn't a murder, it was actually just a reckless homicide, because obviously they didn't want to get first-degree murder because that means you're potentially going away for life. Like, you don't want to get first-degree murder, pretty much ever. Like, maybe just don't kill people, you'll be fine. But a reckless homicide, however, would get a significant less amount of time, because basically what they did, and this is why it's so interesting, is because they had to actually present more information as to why he was a creepy fucking weirdo freak who was obsessed with her, in order to convince the jury that it was a reckless homicide and not purely like premeditated and thought out. Are you with me? Because I'm not sure I am. So the logic behind their defense was essentially that he was like obsessed with her and he really wanted attention from her. He didn't want to break up. That was all her doing, and so he was the one that actually sent her all those text messages about the kidnapping. I mean, obviously, but whatever. And they said that when she came out, he got that little bit of attention from her and that made him feel good. So then the next day he decided to do another ridiculous, drastic action in order to get the response, which is the attention. And then he gets the good feeling of like, I've got Emma's attention, and it became like a cycle. So he wanted to keep upping what he would do to scare her or freak her out or whatever, in order to continue to get that attention and then get that like dopamine happy like feeling of accomplishment and her attention, so that he didn't like spiral out of control. And because she called him, he felt wanted, he felt needed, he felt good. So then he wanted to up it again. So then the next time he went back, he wanted to scare her. He thought that if he could scare her enough, she would call him again and he'd come over and be the little knight in shining armor, and he'd get his little attention fix. He'd feel good about himself, and then, you know, that might open up avenues for them to be friends, which means more attention, or for them to date again, which again is more attention. And so they claimed that his whole plan was to just go there and scare her, not to go there and kill her. So essentially their whole defense was that this was an accident, a horrible, horrible, tragic, unfortunate accident that he was so apologetic and so remorseful for. And they even went so far as to claim that Riley was an unexperienced gun user, an irresponsible gun user who didn't know how to use guns. So they claimed that a person who doesn't know how to use guns also didn't know that a bullet goes through a wall. They claimed that he thought that it would hit the wall and then fall. Like the bullet wouldn't go through the wall, because he's so inexperienced, he's so dumb, he just wants to scare her, that there's no way the bullet's gonna go through the wall. So he shot 2 bullets at the outside of the house to scare her, and had no idea that it would go through the wall, her wall, the exact right wall, in the exact right place where her bed is, to hit her and kill her. What a hell of a coincidence. Irregardless of that very creative story, which I wonder if he had any doing in that, because obviously he's very good at making up stories. Like, he was so kidnapped. So anyway, I'm just salty because poor Emma. On the 8th of May 2018, the jury found Riley Gall guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced him to life in prison without the chance of parole until 50 years. He was also actually charged with another 6 felonies for lying to the police, making false statements, and for having a gun, which he wasn't licensed for, he was inexperienced with, and you know, all those things, they were felonies. There's a little fluff in the air. Emma's friends and family obviously were so devastated, especially during this trial, knowing that it was Riley, someone that they didn't like, knowing that her parents didn't want them to date, didn't want them to see each other. Like, they did what they felt like they could to keep them apart. I can't even imagine the pain and guilt and just anger that they would have felt because of that. But I mean, at the same time, he was just a young kid who played football, who liked to know where his girlfriend was. Like, his friends didn't know that he was capable of this. His friends thought that he was a good person, and clearly his friends were good people themselves because they went to the police and they did all these things, you know? So it just, yeah, like, no one would have really suspected this. No one would have thought that he was capable of this. So her parents should not have ever, you know, blamed themselves in any way. That is the murder of Emma Walker. Let me know what you think about this one in the comments down below. I want to know what you think about Riley. What do you think about his defense? Do you think that that has any truth to it? Or do you think that he intentionally went there to kill her? Because honestly, I suppose either way it kind of makes sense. I don't know. What do you think about his friends kind of switching up on him? Let me know in the comments down below, or you can head over to my Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, which are all linked in the description, and let me know there. I'd really like to hear your opinions. You can also leave me some other cases that you want me to cover that I can go and look into, because I love getting suggestions. Be sure to give this video a big thumbs up if you feel like it. I would really appreciate it, and be sure to subscribe so that you can see all my new videos. I post every single Thursday all about true crime, and I would love to have you be a part of it. I'm at 700 subscribers now, which is still very, very small, but I'm very, very grateful and actually very happy. I'd really like to get to 1,000, but I'm so thankful for every single one of you who subscribe to me. Honestly, I don't know why, but I appreciate it, so thank you. Make sure you guys are being safe out there. Don't call your ex, no matter what. Don't go back and forth with someone to try and help them if it's only gonna hurt you. Point out red flags to your friends and your family and your kids and explain it and go through it, and don't let people get fucked up, and don't pretend that you can think that they're green flags when they're red flags, because bitch, we both know they're red. Be honest and communicate and have a beautiful life. Thank you so much for watching. Stay safe. Bye. So I don't know why I'm laughing. I just feel so awkward. Yeah, I mean, I'd still be worried even if I didn't do it, but point is, they were working with the police. I'm sorry, this video is not like my usual videos. I'm so deliriously tired. I just want a nap. Imagine we just had a YouTube channel just for napping. I'd love that. No, I wouldn't. That'd be boring. Because I just get to shit talk to a camera, and it's great. Love it. Oh, did the camera just drop, or are my eyes playing up? Could be either way.